Yeah, I'll be a testament to the podcast AI. It's been great. It's getting me started, and everybody knows how I am not tech savvy by any means. I mean, I didn't get a smartphone until about 3.5 years ago. So, I mean,
You're like, I'd like the dumb phone, please.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. I got Steve Hamoen with us today, and he's a 10X coach. He's going to talk to us about podcasting. Hey, welcome to the show, Steve.
Oh man, thank you very much for having me, Cory. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. It's You've been an amazing mentor and coach about these podcasts, and I'm glad you come on here to help our our visitors here today to see and talk about podcasting and how it all works and how it can help you in the future, how it can help you in business, and all the social skills that you're going to learn with it and how to communicate with people. So tell us, Steve. I mean, what got you started in podcasting, and what makes it work for you?
That's a great question. When I look at the beginning of getting into podcast, I never really thought that was going to be something I was really going to jump in on. I looked at it and I was like, wow, they've got all this special gear, this special cameras, all this crazy technology. And it looks so hard to get into because there's just so much. And then you got to do all this editing work. And so the bar always just seems so high and so hard to get over. Meanwhile, I'm growing my business and I'm trying to find all these different ways to try to reach out and communicate with my community, get to elevate the network that I'm working with, and just really get to know people. And so you'd go to all these network events, put all this advertising out and do all these cold calls and stuff. And I'm not saying that I still don't do some of those things, but right now what I've found is that my podcast and then my podcast journey has been the number one way of growing my business in the balance of last year and in this year. So it's an unbelievable. So I have to say I recommend podcasting for anyone.
Yeah, no, that's great, Steve. I mean, you've helped me get this one here started. Of course, we're just coming off the ground here, but man, has it been a journey. And without your help, I'm not sure where this would have gone. And you're absolutely right. The gear, the equipment, I'm thinking, I mean, I haven't even got my headphones yet. I guess that's the next step so I can look professional. But it's great. So, you know, when you got started here and you're getting it started to help jumpstart your business, where did it actually click that you seen that it was jumpstarting the business? I mean, what areas was the key points?
Yeah, well, what I first did is I think in order to really try to figure out what you need to do, I think you look to the people who are most successful and what are they doing. And so I looked at people like Grant Cardone. I looked at people like Tony Robbins. I looked at people, anybody who's out there who's massively successful in their industry, even some of the great real estate agents out there. Um, what are they doing? And they all had podcasts. That was the one thing that was synonymous. It was funny. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Melody, and what she said is that, and we were talking about podcasts. She goes, well, everybody has a podcast. And I said, well, who's the everybody you're talking about? And then she, rhymed off 4 or 5, 6 names. I said, are those like the most successful people in their space? Or are they the least successful people in their space? She's like, well, they're all the most successful. So I said, well, so if all the most successful people are having a podcast, there's got to be something about it that needs to be done. And so then I started a deep research and I looked at number one, what people are doing. I went to events. So I was down at Podfest, which I'm actually wearing their shirt today, the Podfest shirt. And what a great community of people. Chris, who runs that place, he's just so wholehearted in the community. But I just dove deep and I said, what are they doing? I looked at, talking with people in 10X stages. So there'd be Pete Vargas and Pat Quinn. And these are the guys who trained all the greats. And so, what did they think about podcasting? So I really did a deep dive. And what I found is that there's really 3 ways to really make a podcast successful. And if you look at doing those 3 things, you're going to really find that you can make a really big impact, not only in your community, not only with your clients, but on the bottom line with your business.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's exactly why I started mine, is to help my community, and in turn give back to the community here. So this podcast is all about trying to help entrepreneurs, here locally and globally, of course, anybody who wants to. But I'm concentrating big on my local community to help promote their businesses and help promote, what themselves, so they can help better their situations and their families, which will help in turn help our entire community here. So, I really
Yeah.
appreciate the help you're giving me. Now, you're you talked about the podcast. There's different ways of doing it. Like, I'm promoting basically everybody else, but there's other podcasters. That's what they do, is they just promote themselves. And I've seen that you got to kind of find this happy medium, because you need to bring them both together. Really, I mean, what's the key to success to bringing this all together?
Yeah, I think the number one thing when you're looking at podcasting is have a strategy. I mean, the idea of just kind of getting on a mic and just randomly talking. I ran into some unfortunate stories when I was in Orlando where people would be, they're on 400 or episode 500, and you ask them, I said, well, what was the goal to do this podcast? It was to build their business. I said, well, how did it go? And they go, well, I still don't have sponsors, and I still don't, not a lot of people are listening to my show, and it's just not working. And I give them a lot of credit, because imagine going 450 shows and not even remotely coming close to the goal that you're setting. That is a testament to a resolve that is very, far found. And so what I look at is, I say, the first thing you got to do is you got to have somebody who's done it before, somebody who can show you the ropes on how to be able to get from A to B. That's number one. Because if you don't have somebody who's helping you, you're going to be struggling through everything. That's what I did when I first got into it. I was like, I didn't know what tech to use. I didn't know what software to use. I didn't know what's the strategy of how to handle as a host. I didn't know all of these things. And so first thing is really surround yourself with somebody who knows what they're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess that's why I picked you, huh, Steve? So you can give me a hand.
There's a lot of great people out there. That's the wonderful thing about the podcast community. The podcast community has got a lot of really, really good people in it. I mean, I've got a friend of mine. He does a great job of helping people build a strategy about being a really good guest. And there's just so many people out there that are looking to help people in this community to be able to build their business, and then providing the actual results. Because there's one thing which is helping somebody, and the second thing is helping them actually get the results.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So what's the worst situation when you're running your podcast that you've actually ran into?
Oh man, worst situation. Well, I think the worst situation is when somebody comes on your podcast and they believe that you need to run your podcast like how they want you to run their podcast. And I think that is something where it's bad, because it's almost like if somebody's dancing on the ballroom floor and two people are trying to lead. It doesn't work. You've got to have a message where it's very clear when you're talking to whoever's coming onto your podcast. This is your domain. This is your house. This is your rules. And if you make the rules, hey, this is a non-swearing podcast, don't swear on the podcast. If you make this as not a monologue podcast, have a conversation. If you make this as a podcast, don't pitch the whole time of the podcast. Well, then they shouldn't be pitching on the podcast.
Right.
And so the idea is, that is probably where the situations can get rough. Funny ones would be, they show up and, their background, some things that maybe should never be recorded happen in the background, and those can be pretty hilarious.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So number one, have a plan. Number two, run your podcast. Don't let them overwhelm you with how they want. Give us number three. Come on, give us another sweet little nugget that these people here listening can take away and be able to get their podcast maybe off the ground. Of course, I would say
I think, I think number three is just massive action. And I would probably even take number three and put it to number one. And that to me is never going to be perfect. It's never going to be exactly what you want it to be. But if you follow with that mindset, it'll also never get done. And so, just like when I'm teaching, so I do presenting jiu-jitsu, and just like when I'm teaching somebody an armbar, If I stop them every second that they're trying to do an arm bar, they're never going to start to build up the reps. So if they do 5 and then you fix it, they do 5 and then you fix it, they do 10 and then you fix it, they do 10, then you fix it, they do 50, then you fix it, then, and that way they're building up the reps to be able to start understanding the mechanics of what they're doing. Because there's a whole idea that you could spend all this time in planning, and then once you actually get into execution, that's when you actually see a lot of visibility of the things that you didn't see in the planning phase. And so massive action solves a lot of planning problems. So my belief is get into that moment of massive action so that you're actually out there doing it. And then what's the worst thing that could happen? Things start to fall apart. If you want to talk about a big thing that happened, I would do a podcast once with a fellow who we're doing this deep breathing exercise in the podcast. And I take this deep breath in. And then when I left it out, I didn't have any water with me. And I completely dried up. It was like the third or fourth podcast I was recording the other day. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I was hacking away. I was like dying. And then after it was like, okay, I'm going to make sure I delete that. Well, guess what? I left it in. And the reason why I left it in is because I had a bunch of buddies who were like, dude, that was hilarious. And it's just because it's authentically true. It's authentically me. It's my reaction. So I just thought imperfect is perfect. And look, AI right now, when you have an AI agent, calling you and it's a voice, they're programmatically adding in ums and ahs to make it feel authentic.
Yeah.
So why do we want to take those things out? Why do we want to take ourselves out? Let's just be ourselves. And people, when they meet us in person, we're the same person.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Being genuine is a key point of doing business and, communication. We all need to know it.
Yeah. And massive action.
The massive action. I've always, when I was in construction, and something would come up, and everybody would be looking at trying to figure out how to get started, and I would just, being the boss, I'd walk up and go, we have to get started if we want to get it done. So quit looking at it and let's get going. But that's the biggest thing. Everybody wants to stand around and, some people need to be led by the hand, but you got to get started if you want to get it done. That's always been one of my favorite sayings.
I love that statement.
So that's great, Steve. So, you told us your worst experience. What's been your best experience that you've had, having your podcast and teaching people?
Oh my gosh. The list on that one is so incredibly long, Cory. So the big thing is I want to talk about the value proposition that comes out of podcasting. And that will probably help kind of explain the reason why I think podcasting is so good. Number one is if you're doing what we're doing right now, which is, meeting with guests and people are coming on your show, you just get to meet so many cool people. And the best part of it is they're on there to share their story. They're on to share their perspective. I met a fellow who I met him on a light level event and he had a bulletproof vest on. I was like, man, I hope I get connected with this guy. And sure enough, we get connected and we get on a call and we just started talking. I said, dude, let's do a podcast together. I only had like 7 minutes to talk with him. And I had no idea what to expect. And this was back when I used to record right away, which was kind of silly. You kind of want to do a 2-step process so you can make sure you have a good conversation. But I looked out with this one. Like, it got on the show and I was like, this is going to be a wild card. And the guy was the most thoughtful. The guy was the most introspective. The guy had such an amazing just awareness around things. I had a conversation for like 6 hours. And it was just an amazing podcast. And it was a person I never would have met if I were just walking down the street or going to some, event or whatever. So the idea that you can meet with such amazing people, that's the number one thing about podcasts that I believe. Number two is the audience that you can connect with. And now I'm not talking that, like Mr. Beast levels where everybody in the world knows you. I mean, eventually, hopefully it gets there. I've got the Joe Rogan bald head, so maybe that'll work for me. But the thing is what's that?
You're working on it.
I'm working on it. And, but the thing is in your local community, you find that a lot of people will actually connect with what you're putting out. And I've had people, I was at an event in, where was it? Toronto, I think it was. And somebody came up to me, he goes, you're Steve from the Money Mindset podcast. And I was like, yeah. And I said, oh man, I love that episode about such and such and such and such. And thanks, man. Like that's awesome. And it was interesting because they had heard my voice and that's how they knew who I was. And that's a pretty cool experience, especially when they say the moment that they listen to. So there's an episode that I had with the guy by the name of Nick Shelton, and they talked about how what Nick was talking about overcoming the being an introvert, and how that episode really helped them, hit some of the things that were really important from inside them. That's huge. And so, I thought that was pretty cool, to kind of see the impact. And the last thing is, eventually it's going to give you reach to hit even a greater, larger group of people. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is a pretty nice way as technology has taken us further and further beyond. I mean, 20 years ago, what was podcasting? There was no podcasting. So it's neat now how, like you say, we can reach different people. I mean, we jump on a call virtually and talk from here. I mean, you're up in Canada. I'm over here in California. I mean, here we're having a conversation where, 20 years ago, that'd have been over the phone. I wouldn't know that you were, having the Joe Rogan bald head. So,
you probably for the better on that one, but you're 100% right. I agree with that 100%. I think, the way that we can connect with people, and I think there's so many people out there that have a voice and have a story. Like there's certain people that just don't relate with all people, right? And so they want somebody else who's not bald. Well, baldish, right? They want baldish, not bald. And so, they're going to relate with somebody different who just has a different voice, a different perspective, and a different story. And I think, giving somebody a platform would be able to get their message out. It's sort of democratizing that ability to create impact. And I think that's the wonderful thing about podcasting.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But then you have this other side of people, of course, that are kind of, like technology is the devil, it's going to be our downfall, and I don't try to make the argument with them, but I try to prove to them what goods come of it too. I mean, for our medical purposes, all the stuff. I mean, we're living longer. And of course you have these people say we're going to run out of food then. I mean, I've always said you can find the negative in whatever you want and you can find the positive in whatever you want. But
that's 100% true.
Socially, I think this way of being able to reach out to so many different people, so, across the country, across this globe, it's just amazing the communication that we can get started and what we can learn from it.
Absolutely. And the impact, right?
Yes.
I mean, the fact that you can reach to somebody who maybe in that moment, they just needed to hear those words that you had to say. And that words take them from a moment of being lost and being confused and not knowing what to do to getting to that moment of having clarity and having purpose and focusing back in on their mission. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Steve. What, if there was something that, that you could give to our listeners here, that you can just that one little piece, that one little extra nugget, what can you give them? And number one, how can they get a hold of you if something clicked here and they want to maybe get started?
Absolutely. Well, I'll hit the first thing off, is that it's not as hard as you think it is, right? Everything always looks so hard from the outside until you get to the inside, and then it's not so difficult. I mean, even a lot of like Cory is able to get onto podcasting, and and so
Here I am.
which is a testament to what modern technology is like. Like, look, one of my really good clients of mine, podcastai.com, they produce a platform that takes all the technology problems away so that you can go in, you can host your podcast. It's all done in one spot. Allows you to do all your transcription, allows you to do everything that you need, put out all your feeds, everything's done. And it just takes all the technology problems out. And I think, if there's anything that I would say is a giveaway for the audience, I would say that, like, check out one of my clients, podcastai.com. And, I do a training course for them. I actually, what I'm running this month is I'm running it that the training course we're providing for free. So we're doing a training course on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, every day at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time, and 5 p.m. GMT time. And so, what that course is designed to do is to help people really understand, how do I actually get started? And we do that for free. And so for everybody who signs up for Podcast AI, and so the design is to make people understand that it's not so hard, get their voices heard, get their message out, and start getting up podcasting and speak to the world.
Yeah, I'll be a testament to the Podcast AI. It's been great. It's getting me started, and everybody knows how I am not tech savvy by any means. I mean, I didn't get a smartphone until about 3.5 years ago. So, I mean,
You're like, I'd like the dumb phone, please.
Yeah. I still to this day wish I still had it, but I just can't. I just can't not have one now. You got to have it to run and do what we're doing. I mean, you got to be on the spot sometimes, and technology has taken us there. But I totally agree. Podcast.
Are you the only person who asked the phone company, can I get a dial on my phone?
I was a jack. And I had the flip phone. Okay.
Okay, there you go.
I was even upgraded. I didn't have the one where you pull the little wire out of the antenna either.
Ooh, nice. That was called the pen. You were supposed to use that to write on it. It wasn't.
Yeah. No, the Podcast AI has been great for me. It, like you said, it takes a lot of the stuff out of it. And Sean in there, he's been the one that's been guiding me through it. Been great. So, yeah, between you and Sean and all that, this has been definitely a journey that I've had. This is great. Love getting started, and I really appreciate you being on the show and giving our clients here. I always say clients because I'm always thinking business wise, but our listeners out there, don't be upset at me. You're not my client.
But if they all want to become clients,
Clients. But yeah, no, thanks, Steve. Unless you got something else, I think we'll just wrap this up. And I appreciate your time, and well, hopefully our listeners.
I just want to say, out of, I work with a lot of people across the globe. I've worked with people as far as in Japan, teaching sales and marketing. And I got to say that all my conversations with you, Cory, have always been straight from the heart. You've been one of those people that just speaks with honesty, speaks with just, all the care about the person that you're listening to. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. And I'm so excited for what you're going to do in the future.
Yeah, appreciate that, man. I greatly appreciate that. Yeah. So anyways, to our listeners, this is the Cory Nunes podcast. And everybody give Steve a big old wave goodbye. Steve, thank you. And we will see you guys next time. Bye.